welcome to the next episode of Jobs AI Can't Replace. And we're here with Mauricio Villasuso, VP of Little Havana, owner, investor, and developer in Miami, working at Fausto Commercial.
Hey, G.
Hi, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. This is really cool. I think this is my first podcast I ever do, actually.
Awesome. So thank you for joining us. I want to hear a little bit about what you do every day for your clients, and how that is something that like AI can't replace in terms of like relationship and experience wise.
Sure. Yeah, we this is actually a topic of regular conversation at the office.
Okay.
And there's often like a lot of sharing of different podcasts and interviews and comments on it. But like definitely from what we do, like on the brokerage side where we work, we do a lot of cold calling, for instance, very old school traditional, and it's still very effective. Being that we're the number one privately owned brokerage in South Florida, and we're doing great, phenomenal, with over $700 million in listings. And part of that, what makes us successful is the human component, because we, first are on the phone directly. The first barrier to meeting with any potential owners who are considering whether acquiring any property or selling it is, first you gotta go meet them and see what potential, issues they might have. And when we're on the phone, it's a little bit of a preliminary discovery, if you will. And so they might say something like maybe they're having a headache with the property or other, and then that'll lead up to an opportunity to go meet in person. And they're already leery of meeting with someone they just met over the phone. So I can only imagine, AI,
Sure.
You can sense its pauses, you can sense you're talking, as at this point, the way the technology is, that it's limited in that conversation. So we gotta build rapport and trust right off the bat on that phone call,
Okay.
and then further that in person, right?
Okay.
And then the next thing that's unique is when we go and do a site visit, and that can be sometimes at the actual property or with the owner themselves. Then again, we further explore what it is they really want to accomplish. Sometimes they don't fully appreciate their goals, or they haven't really clearly stated it over that initial phone call that I mentioned. And there could be a lot of issues. One could be like legacy. Maybe they're an elderly person considering, their future generations, their children, and what they want to leave behind them. Sometimes it's a factor of like, they just want to raise revenue, and they know maybe they're stagnant. They've got their income and the rent's really low, and they're trying to see what are the options to do that. And then third could be the building's just giving them headaches. And then there's another aspect to that, which is sometimes it's just liquidity problems. And the liquidity problems could be, whether they have a bad loan, they have a lot of debt, or they need that capital to do some other venture, and whatever that venture could be. Maybe it's investing in their kids' business, or maybe a different vision or dream they always had. So when we meet with folks, we go and dive deep into that. And then there's a component of what are the opportunity costs. If it's an option to, like, sometimes it could be a warehouse or an apartment building, which is what I focus on, right? And the apartment building owner might have his rents at the bottom, and he knows everybody. He's had the building for 20 years. He inherited it from his parents. And they haven't done a lot of improvements on the property. But when we're there, eyes on the property, and we're getting that feedback from them, like, oh, your plumbing's cast iron. Oh, your roof is shot. It's 20 years old. When you start looking at all these things, we look with them and see, like, is this an issue you can handle? Are you really in a position to have financially to do this mass renovation of your property? That's a big debate. And we offer some very unique insight, because being that we're actively working with so many other developers, people who are actively renovating and rehabbing buildings, because of our connections with other GCs, general contractors, we know generally the cost of materials and have good solid estimates the way other people do it. Like we can break it down per square foot for the type of repairs we're talking about, like windows for a building given the size, because we've talked to so many people. Like in about 14 years, with all the owners I've interviewed and met with, I mean, I feel comfortable in saying it's like over 200 years of other people's lived experiences. I got a master class from these owners, and I've learned a lot from them. And I think AI, has a lot more to advance before it can get that kind of level of information. So there's that when we're looking at the renovation, looking at what they could raise the rents to, and then when it's exploring, the cost of those materials, those are some of the big issues, and I can think of a few others. Zoning. A lot of what I do also in multifamily space is sometimes you find obsolete buildings from the 20s or 30s. Some, not all, because just because on paper the online records say a building is old, maybe it's been highly renovated on the flip side, and AI is not going to necessarily know that. There's no database to reflect yet. There's a lot of different records they would have to access, permit history and stuff, and then there's a lot of owners out there who do certain components of their renovations without permits. And not to say anything illegal, but just like work that, like a kitchen or certain renovations and basic improvements that don't require one, right? So there's no record. And that's a big shortfall, is there's no database for AI, I think realistically today, to, let's say, go to a B or C market, mom and pop operators running their own private family business, maybe subleasing their buildings to other mom and pop businesses. And it's not like A-class markets where maybe there's some information sharing on big databases. If some people register and have information about leases, where you might find data like rent per square foot. But realistically speaking, it's all private information.
Absolutely.
Like we're talking about terms of like, what are the annual rent increases? What are, if it's triple net or non-modified gross, or profit sharing arrangements between owners and businesses like a restaurant. Like there's so much data that is private knowledge that unless you're a local area specialist, unless you're deeply entrenched communicating with owners and they give you this information, AI won't have this. And I think that's the reality. And that's going to be the case unless someone were really to go out of their way and capture all this in some kind of survey from owners, which they may or may not want to disclose in some system. There's a lot of trust factors here.
Yeah, I mean, like for example, like cars, right? There is that Kelly's Blue Book, but cars are easy because you can get the report of the maintenance, report of crashes, that you can consolidate and you can have it. But for homes, right, there is no, comprehensive way of collecting that data over the years, because a car you maybe own 5 to 10 years, but a home, some people own it for 50, 60 years. There's no way people are like documenting every change that they're making, every time they paint the walls, every time they change the roof and things like that. And have it in one place for you to look at, right? It's got to take a human to go there, build a rapport, right? Be comfortable, like for the owner to open up and say, hey, let me tell you this information that you have, and then you can pass it on, right? To whoever wants my property. But it takes that, because sometimes when you own something for so long, you don't even think about it until someone asks you and have a conversation and kind of open them up like little by little. And they're like, oh yeah, actually, now that you mentioned, we did this, we did that. But otherwise, like, if you think back to an ownership of 20 years, are you going to remember every single time you changed something? No.
Correct.
Right? And that is not captured except through a relationship with someone that they trust, and, feel that you're someone that understands their needs of what they're trying to do. and someone that like they know you know how to communicate to sellers, right? In the best way of what the history of their property is.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I mean, it's not just realtors who I think should be safe. Appraisers should be safe too, because I've looked at algorithms created by like Zillow and some other, websites, and you'll see these confidence ratings. That's an interesting
Yes.
that's done. Like RPR and all these other systems have confidence ratings in their assessments, and you'll see something that's like a 2-star, a low confidence, or a high star. So, and then it gives you this big range, and then when I run the comps and get more into it in detail, I find a lot of errors that were built when you start looking at the ones that it selected, maybe that system, if you can get into it and get some background. I've seen, or even on the phone, I've talked with owners who said, oh, the adjacent duplex to my building sold for 1.5 million. And I said, oh, well, are you happen to be on your computer? And this was on a phone call once. And I told the man, have you ever been a property appraiser website? No. Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, let's go there together real quick. Let's look it up. And while we're on the phone together, and I'm like, let's look down. We scrolled down, and I knew the story. She didn't. I said, notice on the deed there's like in a section there, it shows the sales price. I see what you're saying, 1.5, right? Look to the right. Multi-parcel sale. A lot of people neglect that, and algorithms aren't correctly capturing that. They'd have to dig deeper. They'd have to open that. They'd have to go see the deed. They'd have to see the multiple parcels and folios that were sold. I was actually a 4-building sale. And Zillow, nothing had it in them to like really go that deep. An appraiser would do this. Me, myself, an individual professional. And that's where I go back to owners. And when I have my comps and I show them in Excel, I'll highlight certain transactions and I'll say, please pay attention. Note the same date. I want you to look at this property appraiser sheet. See, the city will tell you and mislead you and say it sold for this price. But in reality, there's multiple buildings included. And when you look at it, let's say it was 2 10-unit buildings side by side that sold for, let's say, $2 million. Okay, it was, it looks like each of them sold for $2 million. Okay, so that's $4 million, $200 a door, $200 per unit. And I'm like, look, they sold together. It was a package deal. It's a lot cheaper. There must have been something wrong with that building. It's defective. It's, let's say if it sold today, and that's really cheap. But so that's one piece. And then another fun one from a recent meeting with an owner. Gentlemen, and this happens a lot. And it's a tool I've seen in other sales, but like the owner said, look, the sales price is one thing, but you'll see on a deed and public record one price. Let's say this building sold for $5 million. But what that gentleman disclosed to me in this one instance was there was an assignment of the contract. Okay. So he actually was assigned it from someone else. So there's an assignment fee that's not recorded. So he probably paid like, I don't know, let's throw a number like 100,000. But then in his complicated case, there was some litigation involved. And he had to force that seller to agree and commit to the deal that he had committed to. And it was, I don't know, there was no number disclosed, but let's throw it for the sake of argument, it could have been $200,000. So the real sale price of that price is not recorded, was $5.3 million. It was still worth it to him. So as a comp, it's not accurately reflected. Gotcha. And so that information is not public knowledge. And then I've also done other transactions where sometimes to bring down the real estate cost, people will pay a certain portion for the real estate. So that's the price recorded, so their taxes or whatever. Okay. And then they'll buy the corporation. They'll buy shares of the ownership. And they do that also to hold the sales price down. And that's another piece of the story that people don't really know what certain properties transacted at, Yeah. And when you're in the market and you have this kind of knowledge, it's very powerful because now you know people will pay a premium. And that's valuable for me because I can tell that to sellers and tell them, look, there's another part of the story. It's not always higher, sometimes it's lower, but that is very unique, valuable information that we as local area experts bring. And again,
Yeah.
I don't think AI
No,
beating us there.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think, all the things you mentioned, right? In at least one of the scenarios I can imagine, the AI would hallucinate and give you something that's completely wrong, right? And who are they going to hold responsible if they got a wrong piece of information that will cost them millions of dollars in the purchase, right?
Exactly.
With you, to double check because you have enough experience to know, hey, this is an important piece of information. I got it, but I can verify through this portal or this place, with the government and so on and so forth. And then in the end, right, people have the peace of mind to go, well, if it's wrong, there's Mauricio, and I can go to Mauricio and say what happened. Because if you go a lot to AI, most often it goes, you're right, I'm sorry. And then you're like, and then what? And then what? Now I'm like, shit out of luck. I mean,
Yeah.
And it's a big deal. This is a big deal. Like a commercial real estate purchase is a huge deal, and there's a lot of money involved.
It could be the largest asset that any person or family owns, bigger than their stock holdings or anything.
Yeah.
And it's not like an individual share. Prior to coming, I looked up really quick about certain news stories in the past where we've heard algorithms and automatic trading was responsible for certain sharp plummets in deals. And I was like, can you imagine this in real estate? Like big, whatever company, let's say, develops this fancy algorithm and it's like Westworld, the movie, where it's like you get a phone and the AI transacts and does a sale for you in 30 seconds. I mean, it was really cool watching the show and seeing that scene.
Yeah.
And I was like thinking to myself, like, can you imagine some massive AI glitch trigger and because of one sale or one of these bad records that there's like, it pushes some massive sell-off and then it corrects, but like in stocks, it's like, okay, you probably did nothing that day and you didn't sell and react to it.
Right.
And things recover in an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
But in real estate, how do you claw back your property?
Right.
Like if it's sold, like for commercial owners, the law is not so safe. For a residential owner, because it's your homestead and this and that, there's probably the way the current law exists, you'd be a lot safer.
Sure.
But for commercial, a deal's a deal. And so, in commercial, a buyer has options to get out and cancel. Typically, the seller, I say typically because if you put it in writing, you can do it. But typically, the seller is obligated to that contract and committed to sell,
Okay. Yeah.
And so imagine if they committed to some automated process like this, where's the fail-safe? And I think for now, like when you have a team of solid realtors, appraisers out there doing it for the financing side, and you have your lawyers and your attorneys who have good experience, and then you also have the title closing company who's got to review titles. There's a whole nother slew of issues probably for them.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my God, yes. To talk about that, like even with title, like we had an experience even on the residential side of it. I think I told you where we were trying to buy property, but then like the owner wouldn't go to the embassy to sign the paperwork, and then they were trying to do like a workaround where they said, oh, I'm going to assign my attorney as my vice president, and he's going to go sign and at the embassy. And the title company was like, I'm not sure we're willing to take that risk, right? Like if they didn't do the research, it would have been kind of like, again, if we use an automated system, it might not have caught it because it would have said, okay, this is potentially allowed, go ahead, right?
Yeah.
But the title company can say, hey, listen, we've experienced something like this before. Maybe this one is kosher. However, from what we've experienced before, it was not. So we advise you against it. And I was like,
correct.
Thank you for making me like take a step back, right? And AI would be like, okay, yeah, the law allows it. Go ahead. It's not going to think.
Is there a layer of fraud there?
Yeah.
That person really couldn't sign, and they were defrauding the real owner. You don't know if it's a fake person. Right. There's all sorts of scary issues. And the same thing happens with wire confirmation of sending them money.
Oh, yeah.
Like they want to check if they had legal power of attorney. They want to check if there's a corporate resolution authorizing that individual. There's a lot of layers there to double check to make sure that the appropriate parties are involved.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And like when I send my like initial deposit, to, the escrow to the title company, they get on like a Zoom with me, and they read out like the actual wire information that they emailed me to make sure that I have the right information and it wasn't intercepted somehow and it was like a scam and I'm sending like hundreds of thousands of dollars to the wrong people, right? And now with AI, right, you can spoof the video. So then you got to ask people to like move to the side so that like they don't have a filter over them, and then take their phone and say, hey, turn on your camera, show me like your face is a face that's shown in the camera. That is what I see, because you have to verify that way now. So that's something.
I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
So it's pretty loaded concept, but I think for us it's a tool. I mean, there's definitely ways to use it, but as far as owners and investors, I don't see it replacing us. I mean, I think it empowers realtors. It could empower a title reviewer to dump on like Notebook LM or some kind of app and just be like, hey, review this title for me, give me any comments. We can have it do marketing and descriptions and probably aggregate descriptions based off prior sales and prior flyers, and maybe it could build a cool one for us for a new one, and then from there we got to read it ourselves and tweak it. You can put all the financial numbers and history, like it's useful. It helps us become more productive, but it's not replacing us.
People want to be like handheld and like taken through the process by a responsible human being.
Oh yeah.
Because it's such a big deal.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, those stories where we met these owners in person. Yeah. They're not going to divulge these secrets to some AI online network.
Here's a questionnaire and type all your secrets that you ever remember about your house.
Yeah. Like there's not that layer of comfort because they figured, it's not recorded. They don't know if that's a database online.
Right.
So you've got so many components to it. There's so many colorful stories in Miami. Like I've met some people who clearly were probably involved back in the day, like the Cocaine Cowboys and different stuff. And they've got some interesting stories. Nice. And you go to a meeting and it's like the wife is the owner on file on record.
Okay.
But then she's like, talk to my husband, or and it's like, it's his property. And it's like they probably had a stash house or God knows what story.
Sure.
Like there's so many fun things you learn, and you meet, when you meet people along the way and they tell you why these are the decision makers. Yeah. And that's another thing, oh my goodness, just reaching out and calling to some of these owners, a lot can happen. You in real time, the records aren't recorded. Sometimes I get calls from an attorney and there's a probate coming, or the someone passed away and it's really the heirs or the owners, and there's no recording yet. I've had owners that they're the kids and their parents died 12 years ago. The parents still show on file. They've never gone with a death certificate and changed ownership. There's weird cases like that. And I don't think AI is if it was gonna qualify them as a seller, would AI even know to tell them, hey, these are the steps you need to take?
Yeah.
We can still sell your property, but wouldn't know, hey, you gotta go to a death certificate. And a big thing that I do on my side, again, aside from the early discovery stuff I told you, so now let's say we have a deal and we're under contract and we have an inspection period. There's all due diligence documents and inspections and stuff that have to happen, right? So here's another big piece of what we do and the service we provide, and I think most professionals in the industry are doing, is let's say the buyer comes back with some report and says XYZ is in bad, condition. Yep. The roof, the plumbing, you have a violation for this. Sure. Is AI gonna do a big estimate? And it probably could. It could probably go and sweep every website online and look at roofers' estimated price per square foot. Maybe it could develop an estimate, but that's another human component, because sometimes realtors and certain owners get discounts from roofers, or they've had a relationship. I've had owners look at a quote and that comes from one of these estimates that the buyer gave and said, my roof is going to cost me $50,000. And I don't think so. And they got it done for 26, 27. And why? Because they have connection. They've done 30 roofs and they have 40 properties, and they got a good connection, a direct favor from a favored status customer relationship that they have. No AI has that.
Yeah.
And they were able to say,
Absolutely.
I'm going to negotiate this. I'll get it with permits recorded before we close. And they'll commit to doing it because they know they're going to save money. There's certain things there in that negotiation process that individuals can take ownership of and do themselves, and they'll do it better than probably AI. And sometimes it's me guiding the owner to those contacts and to get that discount price. And sometimes it's a matter of pushing back and countering those estimates from a GC with another GC. There's a lot of that. Sometimes it's simple violations like that people make a big thing out of. One time we saw a waste contract for one lady, her father. It started off as a $50 issue. It exploded to $7,000, and actually it was paid for. It was the city hadn't closed the file. It just looked and stayed there, but they were like, oh yeah, here's the receipt and everything. They actually paid this. It's just someone left it open. We've seen several violations like that before where like you just go to the city and they're like, oh, our error, like if you look at the reports here, but it was never closed out in the system. And that's a simple fix that to everybody looked like a $10,000, $20,000 problem. And now just by going to the city of person and going in person and having someone run the permit history. Now granted, accessibility and different factors, could an AI system maybe find it? Maybe. That would involve replacing a lot of the people there at the city. But, and then there's that. And then there's other problems that like, you got to negotiate. I had another lady, started like a $50 problem. 21 years later, she inherited, the problem started for her father. 17 or 20 years later, she inherited this property. 4 more years had passed. And she had never gotten a notice or knew that there was a violation on the property. It had been accruing interest. Wow. This $50 problem grew to an $86,000 problem that she was going to have to go and try to do mediation for to the city. And, you know, things like that like, again, owners won't know. Probably AI systems won't know how to handle and direct people like, here are the resources, here's how you handle, here's who you call. And again, because of my working relation with a lot of people in the city, I know who's in code enforcement, I know who's in compliance. I've got people in permit office, and I can email them direct. I can call them and I can say, hey, so-and-so is coming, and we'll handle the correspondence, and I'll sometimes help the owners deal with it because maybe they're out of state and they don't even live in the country. And they're like, hey, help me out. We're trying to do this deal, Mauricio.
And like, with the city, right? They have like their schedules, right? If they go to lunch, they go to lunch. Like I remember I went to the permit office, and I believe they went to lunch at 12:30. I was there at 12:28. They go, I'm sorry, I'm not talking to you. I'm going to lunch in 2 minutes. But you know what? I bet if I knew you and you told me, go talk to my friend, even at 12:28, he would have been like, you know what? I told Mauricio I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you.
They'd still leave for lunch.
Okay.
I tell you to go at 8:30 in the morning.
But at least you would tell, exactly. But at least you would say, hey, listen, you got to go to this building at this time, or else this is what's going to happen. I went on my own accord. I didn't know there was a paper you got to sign. You got to wait online. And then by the time I got there, they were like, sorry, it's lunch. Come back another day. And I was like, are you serious? So it's not just, right, go there and fix this. They have funny schedules. And it depends on the person that you deal with. Like I've gone to the post office that will do a passport. But if it's another guy, he'll say, no, you got to make an appointment for Saturday. That's the only day that we take appointments. But you can get lucky with maybe someone can say, hey, I have a friend that's there. Just show up. They'll take care of it because they don't mind doing it. There's no law or rule against them doing it. You just got to know. You got to know a guy that knows a guy to make it happen. Right?
I know the process.
And AI don't know a guy. I'm sorry.
And sometimes the fastest way to do it, because I'm just imagining a world of AI just automating, trying to send all those people emails. I've seen emails get buried and take forever to get responded to. And then I've seen other cases where like, you have a distribution of people, if you know all the parties involved in a process, like that finance department and stuff, like if you communicate to them, you'll get a fast response. But like they start getting AI bot emails, they're going to disregard it. It's not going to, unless they have one of their own to respond to everything. But it takes that personal component where you go there in person, you explain to them, you got to tell them the story, and they'll be very helpful. I found, but you got to be able to explain the situation, and that's really how you get the best guidance.
Yeah.
Because those people there, they're professional, and they'll tell you like, oh look, here's your options for an exemption. Here's an options for this. You know, I've had owners. Another fun one. Speaking of a guy had to do a 40-year recertification on a 1,900 square foot fourplex. Well, the reality is he's exempt. If you got a 40-year, if you have a building,
Yeah.
any building, duplexes are exempt, and any building less than 2,000 feet that's commercial. So if it's a triplex or fourplex, typically, because anything bigger, probably not likely.
Sure.
But if it's one of those, and you know your survey matches and shows, hey, it's less than 2,000 feet.
That's amazing.
But where are you going to find the ordinance?
Yeah.
You know, who's had the experience? And
Yeah.
you've got to have systems that have access to all this information and have that working experience. And again, I think we're many years away from that happening, that likely scenario. I'm sure, I don't know how, exactly big the real estate industry is. Like, I don't have the numbers, but imagine when you think of, like, everyone talks about like the 3 to 6%, commission part across the board, across whatever these deals transact at. And you think like, oh, how wonderful if you've solved the formula and you made this amazing AI, and you replaced realtors, and you were getting 1% of, I don't know, a $2 trillion industry or a $1 trillion industry, like, that's a big deal.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's a reason why to invest and do it, I'm sure, but I don't see it happening. I really don't. I see a lot of barriers for that to work.
Absolutely. I think there's one company called Proppy. They have sold the property using Ethereum and the blockchain. But I don't know, and that was 2 years ago. But I haven't heard much from them, so I don't know how smooth it went down, or But yeah, it hasn't taken hold. But all the things you tell me, right? Like, if you don't know what you don't know, you won't know what to ask the AI. And if you don't have the experience, it's hard for you to be like, AI, come on, that's obviously wrong. Like, that doesn't make sense. They would still have to run the data by you. Hey, Mauricio, I did all this research for the past 10 hours of AI. Here's a 50-page report. Can you verify it? You still have to do it, because you would be like, okay, this makes sense. This absolutely doesn't make sense. Or I start to verify it there and things like that. People still will need you to verify the entire file, right? Because AI can't access a lot of these systems, right? You still have to log in, for the permits. You got to create a username, log in, click, a bunch of stuff, open up files and projects and see if it's complete. AI still can't do that accurately now. Yeah. Right?
Don't get me wrong, I would gladly raise my hand and get paid in Ethereum or Bitcoin back. If you had told me, hey, let's do a deal in January and let's agree to 50 Bitcoin and we're gonna close in 60 days, but all things process like normal, that's a windfall. And now it's what, at 100+ thousand? That's a 25% premium. I'm curious, what's the price structure? Is it actually just a Bitcoin figure, or is it actually they put a monetary figure and just pay them in Bitcoin? I'm you know what I mean? Was the deal set at 1.4 million period in worth, and they held at that, or was it hey, I'll pay you 10 Bitcoin, and that's it, flat arrangement?
Whatever the Ethereum value is of the day, that equals to the US dollar amount that they were selling it for. Yeah, because it was still listed on Zillow for a set amount of US dollars, and it didn't say set amount of Ethereum. It said, you won't pay in Ethereum this amount of money, whatever it's worth that day. So that fluctuates, which is kind of scary, right?
No, 100%.
Yeah.
But I would take that the other way.
Awesome. So thank you so much for your time, Mauricio. This was really amazing to truly hear the insights of this, and if I ever get to a point where I am buying a piece of land or a commercial, a commercial property, I'm coming to you, because I'm he knows everything, and he knows people that knows people. So if I need to fix a property up, if I need to do a permit, you at least save me time and money on those efforts, and AI can't do that because they don't have friends like that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, have a good one.
Great doing it.
Awesome. All right, cool. Keisha? Yeah.
We did like 30 minutes.
That's the longest one I ever did.
I think so.